Okay, so welcome everyone to the Southborough School Committee open meeting of Wednesday, June 10th, 2020. It's 6:34 right now, and I'm going to read the notice that has to do with this being done over Zoom. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law 30A, Sections 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough School Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with the right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the district website at, and then there's the link. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen or watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: SAM Government Channel, Verizon Channel 37, Charter Channel 192. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the district website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay, so I think that brings us to order. The first item on the agenda is special recognition.
So at this time, I would like to, recognize Paul Desmond for his years of service on the Southborough School Committee. In recognition of your years of and dedication and service to the students of the Southborough School District, and I believe it's May 2011 through May 2020. So you almost made it one full decade on the Southborough School Committee. I just wanted, again, from my perspective, you've been an outstanding committee member. You've been a staunch advocate of the students. You are always ask the right questions, and I've really greatly appreciated your efficiency as a committee member. To show our recognition, we have two citations for you this evening. The first is from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, from the House of Representatives. And I'll just read the citation. It says, "Be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Paul Desmond in recognition of your dedicated service to the town of Southborough as a member of the Southborough School Committee." And it's signed by the Speaker of the House, Robert A. DeLeo. So that is from the House of Representatives. And then secondly, we have official citation from the State Senate. And it says, "Be it known that the Massachusetts Senate hereby extends its congratulations to Paul H. Desmond in recognition of your dedicated service throughout your time on the Southborough School Committee. And be it further known that the Massachusetts Senate extends its best wishes for continued success, that this citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to, and a copy thereof transmitted by the Clerk of the Senate." So it's signed by the President of the Senate, which is Karen E. Spilka, attested by the Clerk of the Senate, Michael D. Hurley, and offered by State Senator James B. Eldridge, and it's dated March 18th, 2020. So on behalf of the school system and the students, thank you very much, Paul, for your years of service.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate that.
We do have two gifts here that we'll have to wait to provide you in person when we're afforded that opportunity. Maybe Saturday before the annual town meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and I will, I'll just add to that I've only had the privilege of overlapping with Paul for 3 of his many years, but I've always really appreciated, Paul, your level-headedness, your thoughtfulness, and your big picture thinking about everything. And I think we've all benefited from that, and we're gonna miss it. But you know, you'll still be around, which is nice on the regional. So
That's true.
that's great.
Thanks, Katar.
Yes, if I might, I'd like to just add maybe just a couple comments. I certainly want to say me too to what Keturah said, because I found Paul to be all and provide all those things. But I think Paul, we said he was he's the only one that was here on this committee when I started, and I look to him for leadership. Even though he wasn't always the chair, and it really helped me. I think it really helped me get a good start and a good foundation for being a member of the committee.
Well, thanks, Roger. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I want to echo too, because Paul, you're the one who brought up to me about running for school committee in the first place. And when my first year was last year, when you were the chair, and you were so helpful and patient with all my questions, and I learned a lot from you. So thank you.
You're welcome. That's what you get for living so close to me.
I know, and I'll still ask you questions.
I'd like to add the same thing too. Poor Paul, I mean, probably between the two of us starting, I had a lot of questions too. So when I first started asking all these questions and how does this work? How does that work? So you were always very helpful, and I'll miss you having you on the committee.
Thanks, Jen. Appreciate it. You know, Roger, it's interesting you said that, because I look around and I see all 4 principals now are different from when I first came on the board. And I'm also on my 3rd superintendent. So I think maybe that's a sign I've been here long enough. But it's been great. It's been really, you know, it's been great having sort of an inside seat to see the work that all of you do, and the dedication you have, all the administrators, the teachers and staff, and, you know, just the great work you do every day in the school. So it's been an honor for me to really try to play a small part in helping you ensure you get the resources you need. So, and also, I got to say, I have no qualms about stepping down right now, because I've got complete faith that the current members will carry on all that good work. You're in good hands.
I'm not sure if someone said that our loss is the region's gain, you know?
Yeah.
Very true.
Yep.
So Paul, you will make the decade threshold as a school committee member, just
True.
through the region.
Okay.
Right.
Whatever it takes.
Okay, so that brings us to audience sharing. So this is I think that since we moved to Zoom, this is definitely the largest virtual audience we've had so far. If anybody who is not on video right now and is in the waiting or in the participant room, I guess it's called, I'm not sure, has a question or a comment or something that they'd like to share, then you can type that into chat. Greg is monitoring that, and we'll go from there. So we'll give it a minute to see if anybody has anything to say. Comments so far, Greg, coming
Comments
through?
so far.
Okay. I'll just wait one more minute, because it takes longer to type than it does to say something. Okay, here we go.
So we just have a comment, just says, thank you all for your hard work behind the scenes during this challenging time. And that's from Jacqueline Coutreau.
Okay. Thank you, Jacqueline. It's true. I think those of us on the committee get a close look at all of the hard work that is happening behind the scenes, and it is a lot.
It is an awful lot, so.
Yeah.
So Dave Finneran is on behalf of the Southborough Teachers Association, wants to thank Paul Desmond for his years of service.
You're welcome, Dave, and all the STA.
All right.
Okay, there's another audience sharing at the end, so I think we'll move on to our next agenda item and then see what that brings, if there are any more comments then, and it's fine if there aren't, but just so everybody knows, there will be that chance. Okay, so now we'll move on to new business, COVID-19 health situation, school reopening subjects, and then director updates.
So thank you for the opportunity to share updates around the COVID-19 health situation. I'll be thrilled when this is no longer listed on our agenda, because it will mean we have moved on beyond COVID-19. I just want to let the community know that we continue to work hard to close out the academic year. This Tuesday is the last year of the calendar year of the academic year. And we just want to take a minute to thank all the parents and the community for the hard work educating students. It's truly been a partnership, and we also understand that it's been incredibly difficult for families and challenging, and we really appreciate the extra effort and work. We're also working on thinking about the extended school year with our student support services, and we're thinking about what reopening in the fall may look like. We did send a survey out to the community, thinking about if we were to open in the fall, what are the various means that school would open. We're hopeful that we'll open at 100% capacity if we can do it safely. And that is our ultimate wish and hope. The team is carrying PPE, and I'll let Marielle and Duggan, when we turn it over to directors, give an update on what we're doing in terms of safety and personal protection equipment. So really, when we think about reopening in the fall, there are three scenarios. One would be full opening, making sure that we have safety precautions in place. The second option really is a hybrid opening, and we did survey parents around two options. One was a split week with an A and a B week, with the students divided into two cohorts. And the other option was split week with split days. So cohort A would go in person Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Cohort B would be in session on Tuesday and Thursday. And then the next week it would switch with cohort B attending school Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and cohort A attending Tuesday and Thursday. Since we did share that survey, we've had many more meetings with the Commissioner of Education, who's provided us with some additional guidance. The state is looking at communicating those guidelines and guidance about reopening in the fall in the next couple of weeks. But he did indicate that the state is leaning toward having a statewide reopening model. And in fact, if we did have to move to a hybrid reopening, that the state would define what that is. From my initial conversations and listening to the commissioner, it appears that the most likely scenario would be an A and a B week with two cohorts, a 1 week full, 1 week of school in person, and then 1 full week of remote. Right now, as a district, we're really waiting for more specific guidelines. We have our plans in place. We've done much planning, but before we put more energy and effort, it's really important that we hear from the state and the guidelines that it will provide. And we have been focusing our attention on remote learning. So regardless of next year, it's important for us to revisit remote learning, think about Ennisboro Connect 2.0, rebrand it and really make sure that we're taking into account the feedback we received from the surveys and really make it a real robust platform for our students. So that's some of the work that we're doing behind the scenes. We're doing a lot of thinking. Right now we have more questions than answers. And I think it will take a concerted communication effort over the summer as we become more clear about what the fall will look like. We will communicate with families. And again, we're in a holding pattern until we hear more from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our directors and have them give a brief update of their focus and what they've been working on. And the first person I'll have speak or share her work is Mary Ellen Duggan, Director of Wellness.
Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's well. As Greg said, we've been working a lot together, trying to figure out what's the safest way to get everybody back to school, because that's what we all want, is everybody back to school. But the safety of our students and our staff are our highest priority. We can't ever lose sight that this is a health pandemic. You know, it's a health situation. So we have procured a PPE. The state has given us guidelines of what we'll need for, they recommended to get enough for 12 weeks. We have started ordering and we have received some orders of masks and shields for staff, students, and nurses. And we have gowns in the order and gloves, all those things that we might need once we go back to school. And there's lots of planning, and as you can imagine, every day things change. Like there's studies coming out now that, you know, are saying that kids aren't the transmitters. And so every day there's a new study, so we just have to keep our eyes on what's coming up next. That's it for us.
So any questions for Mary Ellen?
I do have a question, just based on what I've heard about how difficult it is to get PPE. Are we having any difficulty doing that, or is that going to be feasible?
So we have gotten PPE. Becky Pellegrino and Nancy Bissett and I and Keith Lavoie, we have managed to find places to order the things from, so we have gotten enough. We just got a shipment of 10,000 surgical masks in. So that's enough to get us started. And then we'll go from there. The one thing that is the hardest to get right now is gloves. So we are able to get those through our school nurse supply representative. Okay, so we're doing pretty well with all of the PPE right now.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, so is that, you said like 10,000 masks, like how long would that last us?
So the state has given us guidelines about what we should order, and they want their guidelines were 1 mask per student per week, 5 per staff member per week, and 10 per nurse per week. So our 10,000 that we thought was a really great number by their guidelines would last us 1 week.
Oh my God.
So, but we had to think, you know, things are going to be different in August. Hopefully they'll be a lot better. People will have their own masks that they like to wear. The ones that the school are providing are for those people that might forget or need a replacement during the day. So we really didn't have a hard time getting the surgical masks whatsoever. So there are places that they're readily available should we need more. So.
And Greg, maybe we can talk later about budget, like how this is affecting budget.
Absolutely.
Okay.
any guidelines on what to do if a student or staff member tests positive once school reopens, and what happens at that point?
While they're at school, or?
Yeah.
So while they're at school, so there are guidelines that are being set up for, and we will have guidelines, protocols, policies, I'm not sure what you want to call them, but for if someone does get ill at school with COVID-like symptoms, we'll be tracking them. There will be some kind of platform for parents to, you know, when they call in now, that they will definitely need to tell us symptoms. Our local board of health, if we did think someone had COVID-like illness, we would isolate them, and then we would have them go to their primary care physician for testing. We'd notify the local board of health, would follow up with their close contacts. So it would be, you know, we would just need to do a lot of contact tracing once that happened, or if it happened.
And we're able to do that kind of contact tracing?
So we are. I mean, the nurses have been doing it through the summer with the local board of health, but it would be, and the state has contact tracers set up, but it would be just calling and finding out, you know, like say I tested positive, it would be who are my close contacts. And a close contact is someone that's been within 6 feet of you for greater than 15 minutes. So did I eat lunch with anybody, you know, things like that. And then they would go from there and follow them. But that would be the board of health would follow those contacts. Or if it was me in I worked in Southborough, my place where I reside for my work is in Southborough, but I live in Northborough. The Northborough Board of Health would follow me.
Thank you.
So there, with a pandemic, there's lots of guidelines that are followed and the questions you can ask of people. There's lots of guidelines that we have for people entering the building. For our staff members coming back in, they had to go through a checklist and a training before they came in to even pack up the children's things. So it will be the same going back into school. They'll have to go through a checklist every day before they come in.
Yeah, you know, I'm just wondering, because in many countries where they've reopened schools and teachers have tested positive, and then they've had to close the school or the classroom again. So I was just curious in terms of.
So I think the closures, that will be part of our plan, will be when we go back, they'll try to keep students in the elementary school. As you can imagine, it's easier. They'd be in their classroom and people would cycle through to do their specials in the classroom so that there's not as much exposure through the hallways. But that's all part of our going back to school plan. And then that would be it, you know, like who are there, try to limit the amount of intercontact that would happen so the tracing would be less. But it would be like if we have a high case of influenza, you know, rate in the schools, by a certain percentage of absences, we would have to talk about closing that individual school, and it would be on an individual basis when it comes to it.
Just some of the work we're doing is making sure we have, as Mary Ellen indicated, those policies and protocols and guidelines well articulated. We have our nursing teams trained. And then that is one of the reasons why we're in a holding pattern in terms of the guidelines from the state around reopening. Because if we are in a hybrid model where we have to maintain cohorts of students, part of the purpose around maintaining cohorts is for contact tracing. So we know which cohorts of students are in contact with. All right.
And if I could just add to that, from an HR perspective and staffing perspective, Mary Ellen and I will be working very closely with the principals if there are any special requests or if there's anything that arises from staff members around COVID.
Right, I'll have Keith Lavoie give an update on some of the work he's been doing.
Thanks, Greg. Certainly to carry on from what Mary Ellen mentioned, a similar type of planning is happening for our facilities, working closely with our facilities manager, Brian Fantoni, working through everything from cleaning protocols to supply chains to working with our vendors to make sure that we are have the materials we need in place to do the frequent disinfecting that is needed. And we are, like Greg said, also in holding pattern of waiting of what the state guidelines would be, but that hasn't stopped their planning. We've moved forward with a lot of that proper procurement of these, but as well as thinking thoughtfully about the ways that we're going to have to operate, you know, making sure that in between the cohorts, there's a proper cleaning schedule and that all those things can be followed up on, you know, properly. So the building work is continuing. Related to that, in the past couple of weeks, is that all the schools have welcomed teachers and students back to the buildings, not inside. Teachers, yes, but students, no, to collect belongings and to prepare their classrooms for summer cleaning. So huge thank you to the principals and the teachers for their flexibility during this time. They've been able to come in. Many have been able to close out their classrooms to this point, and they're winding up the year with a lot of special activities, which I'm sure we'll hear about from the principals later in the meeting tonight. The other things that we're working on is we are closing out the food services, the lunch deliveries. Want to send a huge thank you to Kyle Parson and his team for the preparation work that was done out of Trottier. We were able to serve to over 45 families, which was 90 plus students in Southborough since just about the beginning of the closure up until what will be the last delivery on June 15th. So with huge thank you to Kyle and his team for the preparation, and certainly another huge thank you to Mary Ellen and the team of nurses that did the delivery of the foods. They did an awesome job of getting the food to a door-to-door operation. And it was certainly it brought a bright spot to many families' day to have the nurses stop by with the food on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule. The other thing that's linked to this is our NRT. Very happy with our bus company and their responsiveness to the program. They did a nice job, as did Jean Pinto, our transportation coordinator, on routing all of the routes for both Southborough and Northborough. So it was a combined effort totally, and we are going to be wrapping that up for a final delivery on June 15th. The other thing I wanted to mention is that for a lot of the things that are back ordered, I mean, Mary Ellen kind of alluded to it, we're not able to get everything we need, but we are in the queue for a lot of those. So as things tend to evolve, we've already put our name in. So it's kind of like waiting for those paper towels from Amazon. You know, you might have put that order in back in February, but you will be getting it sometime soon. Similar for us and our vendors, but we're working through channels to find better ways to get the supplies we need. And we haven't found a major disruption to that or a major issue that we're concerned with at this point, and that our vendors have been in contact with us. And the hopes is that we have everything good to go for the start of school.
Thank you, Keith. Any questions for Keith?
Anyone have any questions for Keith?
All right, next I will have Julie Doyle speak to the work around technology that she's been focused on.
Hey everybody. As Greg mentioned, I think we're all in the same place in terms of winding down for this year and at the same time preparing for next year. And you know, the challenge is not knowing what next year is going to look like. But you know, over the last couple of months, we really have and continued right up until very recently provided a lot of support and training to teachers and students even to help them with the remote learning. We helped them with the online platforms and content delivery and broken computers and all that sort of thing, but also with video conferencing. We started this extended closure using the free accounts that Zoom offered to educators, but then about a month ago, we finally decided that it made sense for the district to purchase licenses for all teachers and administrators, and in order to maximize security, but also to have more sort of global control of settings. So we've rolled that out, and most of the teachers have upgraded to their new license, and that seems to be going well. We've been busy recently looking at the possibility, the very strong possibility of going one-to-one next year. And for those of you who don't know what one-to-one means, that means the school district providing a device for every student. We have done an inventory, and it's looking like there's a strong possibility that we will be able to do that. And the reason why we've decided that it makes sense now is in case, we do this hybrid model, there'll be students coming to school for a week, and then there'll be those same students will go home for a week or every other day. And while they're in school, the difficulty of sharing devices during this pandemic seems unmanageable. So we are confident that we can make this happen, although I don't want to say 100% sure, but we're still looking at logistics. And our other big project is rolling out our new student information system, PowerSchool, and that is going very well. We've almost transferred all the data from our legacy system iPass into PowerSchool, and we're getting very close to being done with that. We've conducted a lot of trainings with teachers. Tomorrow we have guidance counselors in training. The admin assistants have had training. So we're excited about this move, and I know it seems a little overwhelming during this time, but one thing we're sure of is that PowerSchool will do a much better job to support us with the unknown that will happen next year than our legacy system iPass ever could. So we've already received so much support from them with the transition, and we're excited about the change.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Julie? Okay, thank you, Julie.
Do we wait till the end for the audience questions? Because there's a question. Okay.
Yeah, we do. We'll do those in the second audience sharing.
So next we'll have Marie Allen, Director of Student Support Services, give an update on the work her team has been focused on.
Okay. In Student Support Services, we're primarily focused on our guidance on summer 2020 special education services. We've received a preliminary guidance document from the state it came out on June 8th, but we had a Zoom meeting yesterday, and the guidance is currently that special ed services will look different this summer. And the reason is what everybody's already talked about, the health and safety of students, parents, and school personnel. Our schools will not be able to provide summer services in the same manner, so we are currently working on remote ESY with the possibility of in-person on a limited basis for the high needs students once we receive further guidance from the state. We have another webinar on Friday, and it is hoped that we will receive additional information about what that in-person limited basis service will look like. So we're still planning for both, but we are actively working on the remote aspect to begin at the end of June, when we typically start summer services.
Okay. Thank you, Marie. Any questions?
I have heard from some parents wondering about their 504s and IEPs for next school year. I'm guessing that's all up in the air right now, but I just wanted to ask.
What do you mean up in, in what
Sorry?
way? In
Like
what way?
How students are going to be accommodated if we have a hybrid schedule?
Mm-hmm. So that's all part of our planning right now. And depending on what model we choose, we are going to have to consider delivering the services to the greatest extent possible on students' IEPs. So that is part of our planning process. We just don't have the specifics yet, but we are working as a team to try and figure that out.
Okay, that's what I figured. Thanks.
All right, next I'll have Heather Richards speak to the work she's been doing around human resources and supporting faculty and staff.
Hello. I wanted to share that the Human Resources team has really been providing a lot of individualized support to our employees and staff. And because it's individualized, sometimes it may appear invisible, but it is definitely happening. And staff and employees have a lot of questions around benefits. Some of our employees' spouses have lost their jobs, so we've been really supporting employees with that, and coming on to our insurance if need be. There have been a lot of questions around absences or accommodations. We've also been fielding a lot of questions around unemployment. As you know, there is some unemployment fraud that's going around right now. So active employees may be receiving unemployment claims that are not accurate. So we've been helping employees, support employees with that, and making sure that we report those to the state as well. And so we've just been generally trying to support employees and be as flexible as possible, and focus on employee wellness during this time.
Heather, I also would add a lot of recruiting in terms of thinking about recruiting substitutes for the fall, in preparation that we need more subs than we typically would to open up the academic year.
Thank you. And we have active postings on our website right now.
Okay, are you getting a good response to those? Or is it not really?
So far, I think the positions went up just a couple of days ago, and we have, I think, around 10 so far.
Okay.
I have 3 nurses already so far, so that went up with them too for substitute nurses. So,
okay, good.
I have a quick question, hopefully quick, but what happens if there's a teacher or a staff member who's in a high risk group and they feel uncomfortable returning back to the school environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so we have to have conversations, or I have to have conversations with individuals to discuss their specific situation, because something could be as simple as obtaining a face shield instead of a face mask. So there are certain things that we can do to support employees. So if there's a medical condition, then we'll certainly talk about it and see if there's any way that we can provide for accommodations.
Okay.
And lastly, we have Becky Pellegrino, who will talk about the finance department and the work that the department has been focused on.
So good evening. At this time of year in the finance department, we're kind of living in 2 years. We're closing out FY20 and also opening FY21. And with the closure, it has presented some extra challenges. We have been participating with a lot of the planning and also assisting in the purchasing of the PPE supplies. I really want to say a big thank you to Nancy Bissett. She and I went onto the statewide contract list, and we were able to find a number of vendors, and we solicited quotes. I think we received about 10 different quotes. So I think the sheer number of solicitations that we put out there was really helpful in obtaining the supplies that we have been able to receive so far, because I do know other districts who are not able to find the N95 mask. So we were fortunate in that. We've also been working closely with Keith Lavoie and with Kyle Parson to process our eighth graders and their lunch balances, whether it be a refund or a donation or a transfer to a younger sibling, and also to collect any outstanding balances on those accounts. And then finally, we're working with our district and our building level administrators to plan purchases for supplies and materials that will hopefully be needed on the first day of school, and to also help in placing those orders. So we're winding down, but also starting up at the same time.
And Becky, I know that in our last meeting, you gave a very nice presentation about how the closure has affected the budget this year.
Mhm.
Are we finding that that's pretty much stable, that there haven't been any significant changes since the last time that was presented?
Yes, so we are still trending with a remaining balance on the bottom line. And so, and actually this kind of goes to my next presentation later on in the agenda, but we're planning out our purchases for those, and that's part of what we've been working with the principals and also with the administrators on, in terms of looking at some of those supplies and materials that can be purchased for next year that will relieve some of the pressure on the FY21 budget, and also looking to prepay for some of our out of district tuitions and collaboratives, as that's allowed by Mass General Law.
Okay. And as far as sort of differences in the budget based on our different circumstances right now, are summertime expenses and activity, is that affected at all by what's happening now, or is it pretty much going to be business as usual since the buildings aren't really occupied normally and all of that?
So we've been fortunate that the closure has meant that the custodians have been able to kind of get a jump on some of the cleaning that they would normally do over the summer months. So we have already started to do the purchasing for those cleaning supplies. We're hopeful that Saturday will go without a hitch and that we will have an approved budget in Southborough, because that will make all the difference, where we will not be operating under a 112 budget. And we will be able to kind of start that process, the process that we normally would start at the beginning of June. We'll be able to start that next week in terms of doing the purchasing for next year.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, anyone have any questions?
So I will, oops.
Okay.
I just want to, I know this is probably a good time to talk about, some of the anticipated costs as a result of what will it cost to reopen schools. And I know the MASC put out kind of a guiding document around the average expense a district could see. And I just want to point out that the language is may incur to reopen. And it is our position that this is not the reality for our district. When you look at some of their reopening costs, they're looking at, I think, some pretty extraordinary costs. For example, many districts in the Commonwealth don't have a full-time nurse in each of their buildings. So we are well staffed in that manner. So I think that when we look at this number in this publication, we're anticipating the reopening costs and to sustain it for a number of months to be about $50,000 that we weren't anticipating. And part of the funding for that is coming from the CARES Act. Southborough did receive some money to support expenses as a result of COVID, and we'll be using that money to offset some of these expenses. I think also when we talk about the legislative update, I think it's also an opportunity for us to advocate for the funding of many of these safety requirements. Although $50,000 is a lot of money, there are many communities across the Commonwealth who far exceed those expenses and do not have revenue to be able to create those safety conditions. Becky, I'm not sure if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question was similar. You answered part of the question. And I was just curious, we're not, if the guidelines are saying that we're going to have 10 students in a classroom and that teachers are supposed to just have contact with that cohort, that we're not going to have to hire a lot more staff, or, or conversely, if, who's going to be doing the remote learning if the teacher's in the class with kids on, some kids on half the week, however it's broken down?
Yeah, so those are great questions. And we do have a reopening advisory panel asking all of those same types of questions. And we have different scenarios that we're examining and looking at. But until we know exactly what the model is, we need to wait and see. Because the answer is not going to be we need to add twice as many teachers to the equation in order to make it work. We just need to think outside the box and creatively around how we're using all of our faculty and staff to make this work. So again, the guidelines are the key for us at this point, and those are some of the questions that we're asking and thinking about, but we don't have any specific answers yet.
And I think, Greg, also, my understanding is that the guidelines that were put out recently are just preliminary and open to significant change, depending on what happens over the summer, how things are trending, maybe as they get feedback and they're thinking about it more. And I think that they're pretty far from being the final guidelines, although I think they're causing a lot of questions, which is not super helpful, but.
No, I agree. I think that the safety guidelines that were just published, the commissioner did follow up with an email saying, these are the current guidelines, but most likely they're going to look very different in the fall based on the data. So again, that's the dynamic nature of the environment we're in. I can assure you that the leadership team is full of planners, people who like to know where they're going and how they're going to get there, and having their I's dotted and T's crossed. And this year, there's a level of ambiguity in terms of we don't have all of the answers. We have the questions. We don't have the answers, and we're working to get better data so we can provide answers to the community. And that's where the communication will come in, where we're going to have frequent communications over the summer so parents and families can adjust and prepare accordingly. If we're in a hybrid mode, that has an impact on a family and childcare and working conditions. So we're trying to get as much information as quickly as we can, but we're in a holding pattern at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah. Greg, could you speak to who's on the reopening advisory panel?
Yeah, so we have about we have about 40 active members.
Okay.
So primarily we have principals, educators, specialists, district faculty and staff. So it's quite a large group. The way we've organized is that the first layer that we're really thinking about is safety. So again, what safety measures do we need to have in place regardless of whether we open with 100% capacity or in a hybrid mode? What are the things we need to take care of? What are those guidelines and procedures that we need to have articulated and people trained on?
Mm-hmm.
We're also looking at the remote learning. So we need to make sure that we improve our remote learning and NSBoro Connect 2.0 in case we're in a hybrid mode or full remote learning at some point next year. And then we've broken out into a high, middle, and elementary group because the needs are very different at each of those levels. And they're looking at the unique schedules and conditions and thinking about what cohorts would look like at the middle school, high school, and elementary level. So that's how we're organized. We do plan on adding some parents to those focus groups once we have more definitive plans. And I'll also add that we did ask teachers if they're interested in participating on this advisory panel. And we had over 97 educators interested in participating.
Wow.
So we are taking kind of an inner circle, outer circle model where the reopening advisory panel will take the work back to the schools, and the schools will have their own internal panels to really dissect the work and deconstruct the work so it relates to their age group and building.
Okay. That's very helpful. I was just going to ask at what point and how. I mean, it does sound like much of the plan will be dictated by the state, so there may not be a lot of flexibility in some of the bigger items that will affect families, like, you know, how the rotation would work if you have cohorts and that kind of thing. But I was going to ask for the areas where the community can have input, how that would happen. So we would have parents brought in in the groups at some point, and then I know we like our surveys, so we would do, I assume at some point we'd do another survey or something.
Yeah, so we did have over 1,500 responses to the survey around reopening. And although there were two options, what we have found extremely helpful are the comments. The question around how can we support families, that was very helpful. So it's great feedback for us, because ultimately, if we're in a hybrid mode or a remote learning mode, we need a strong partnership and we need to make it work for families. So it's been very helpful to get that feedback.
Okay.
What was
Great.
the survey breakdown of people wanting the 1 week off, one week on, 1 week off versus Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? How did that work?
So we surveyed faculty and staff as well. So it was a close 50-50 split. It was like 53-47. And the family survey mirrored the exact same type of data response rate. It was like a 47-53 split for our choices. So we're really right down the middle, which is very interesting. And I think it speaks to the challenge of every family has a unique situation, a nuanced situation in terms of daycare and work and so forth. So there was no real compelling choice that came through from that survey data.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Which is,
although that choice may be taken away from us.
Right. It's not like saying we're not going to really have that choice.
Yeah. So the good news about that is that at least half of, I'm just glad that half the people, 90% didn't choose the option that the state might not go with.
Yeah.
So we're, if the state chooses the AB option, at least half of our educators and half of our families prefer that. So again, we're waiting to get more guidance, and as soon as we have the guidelines, we'll hit the ground running and do some planning and get answers to all the questions that are being asked.
Is there a plan, or, I mean, what happens if parents, for example, or some families decide they don't want to send their child back to school this coming year? Will they have to go through requirements to, to follow homeschool guidance, or what would happen at that point? And have you had any questions about that from community?
Yeah, so we're also planning for that contingency. So families who might not feel like it's the right decision for the family to send the child back to school. So and that's one of the reasons why we're really focusing on remote learning as kind of an important overarching piece to reopening in the fall. And we are also waiting for some guidelines from the state around what is the expectation of families who choose not to send their sons or daughters back to school. Obviously, homeschooling is always an option, and there's a process to apply for homeschooling. But at this point, it's too early to say what that process might look like, but we're planning for it. We're planning for a contingency of families who are going to choose to have their students remain at home for the time being.
Another question I've seen a lot of people ask is, and you probably don't know the answer to this yet, but will it be possible to keep siblings in the same cohorts?
Yeah, so that's one of the conversations we've had, that families need some predictability, and siblings and different cohorts would make it even more challenging for families. So those are the things that we're looking at when creating the cohorts. So yes.
Okay.
So the theme of my response is that I don't have any answers, which is incredibly frustrating. But we are trying to be as proactive as possible in terms of our response and doing some preliminary and pre-planning and being proactive ordering PPE. But there are, again, more questions than answers.
Yeah.
And things, I forgot to ask this when Mary Ellen was talking, but about like safety upgrades, like hand washing and things like that, having hand washing stations in the classrooms, is that going to have to be something we do? It just seems like, when we looked at that graphic of, it's going to be $1.7 million for, upgrades or whatever schools need to do. And then we only, you're saying we're looking at like 50K. Like, does that 50K include things like maybe having hand washing stations in each classroom and things like that?
Yeah, we're fairly well equipped in terms of having, hand washing and so forth. Keith, I don't know if you want to speak to that and some of the thinking that we've been doing around that.
Yeah, so one thing I would add to that, Mrs. Devine, is that we've really looked at each of the individual schools. We thought of the different ratios. We thought of the way that different things work. So things from, having hand sanitizer in every classroom to having hand washing stations to perhaps including plexiglass in different locations to keep people safe. And certainly looking at food services and all the options of delivering food to classrooms and what added expenses those would be. So all those things are being considered. I know we've gone so far as to measure classrooms and try to see what where the 10 desks would go, or what we would do with surplus desks if we could only have 10 in a room. All those things are being evaluated, and we, depending on what lane we go to, I think we're probably 3 or 4 steps ahead in the planning, but quickly we're going to be behind. So as soon as whatever guidance we get, I think there's going to be a rush of, okay. And then we're going to have to settle down and make a plan that works and that is reasonable. And my thought, and I think everyone's thinking the same thing, is then hopefully in the weeks to come, that guidance becomes a little clearer so that we would know what our situation will be upon a return. And I know that the facility staff is eagerly waiting, what can we do and how we can get involved. But we've taken steps to, buying a sheet of plexiglass 6 months ago was never an issue. You could go to any hardware store and get it. Now it's a 2-3 month waiting list to get some of these orders fulfilled. So those are the types of things we're in the queue for, and hopefully, we'll be in good time to start the school and well prepared. But each building has its own differences, and I think that's what's going to be the challenge, is to look at what the guidance is and then adjust accordingly. So we've looked at all those types of things, or at least they're on a list, they're on a spreadsheet, and each school will need to evaluate each one to make sure we comply appropriately.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
And lots of education will have to be done too, Jessica, with the families, with the students, with the staff, regarding like the hand washing and all of those safety measures. So.
And Greg did mention it earlier, but a lot of this is going to be around good quality communication. I think that's been one of the anchors of all the different things we've talked about, whether it's the schedule that's put in place, the use of proper PPE, down to hand washing. All of it's going to come through a much enhanced communication system that we will make sure reaches all of the families. So simultaneously with plexiglass and hand sanitizer, we also have to make sure that the message is clear and is something that everyone can follow. So it's a lot of change, but it's stuff that we're certainly planning for and thinking of.
Thank you for that. Greg, is there any indication of when we expect further guidance from the state, or we're just?
Yeah, so Commissioner, we have a call with the Commissioner this Friday at 1 o'clock. So he meets with the superintendents weekly, which is helpful. And he, in his latest communication, indicated either next week or the week after. So within the next 2 weeks. So I wish I had a more definitive answer, but in the next couple of weeks, what we were hoping for as a leadership team is that we knew what our plan would be leaving this school year so that parents would know and we could provide them with information. Unfortunately, that is not something we're going to be able to do. And again, to Keith's point, communication will be essential over the summer.
Yeah. Well, I think that's in a way the theme of life right now is there are so many things we'd like to have the answers to. And, you know, everywhere we turn, we're just waiting for more information. So I think that's understandable. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for those. Are we all done with the director updates? Everything?
Yes,
okay.
I believe so.
Oh, I did have one last question. And I assume that this is not happening either, but I think over the summer sometimes is there some ELL learning and that program is not happening either, I would assume.
Rhoda, do you want to speak to that?
Yes. Oh, I wasn't muted. So that is correct. So we're not going to have the face-to-face, but we are planning on staying in touch with our families throughout the summer, especially in August as we get close to the school opening.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so then we'll move on to legislative update.
So just a couple of items. First really is what's happening in terms of the state level budget process. So we are still waiting for indication of what the fiscal year 21 budget will look like at the state level and what type of impact that will have on our Southborough community, in particular with the school's Chapter 70 funding. We have no new information at this point in time, and I think the state is, again, continuing to monitor the revenue landscape as well as the federal stimulus funding that might come through. So we really don't have any new updates in terms of the state level budget. And I think what we can do is continue to advocate with our local legislature and local officials around making sure that they fund Chapter 70 at the level that was agreed upon, and also making sure that the Student Opportunity Act is funded appropriately so we can move forward with some of that work. So I do have two draft letters that I will share via DocuSign to the committee to read over, and then if it's the will of the committee to sign that letter, and we can send it off to our state representatives and try to get some momentum on those fronts. And the other piece that I think is important is MASC also has two resolutions that they are looking at moving forward, and one has to do with, again, funding for the Student Opportunity Act. And the second resolution is really around making sure that districts are adequately funded to support the COVID-19 situation, in particular, being able to purchase personal protective equipment. So those are two resolutions I will also send via DocuSign to the committee members to read and sign, and we can get those off to our legislatures.
I think that sounds great, Greg. And I think also, even though at this moment in time, we're well positioned to cover reopening expenses, you know, in the immediate future, we don't know how long this is going to go on. And I mean, those can accumulate really quickly. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I chime in there? So do we need votes on those, or?
I don't think so, Paul.
Maybe we can double check it, and
yeah.
If we do need votes, I think we're planning on having a really quick meeting next Wednesday. If we can, we're going to talk later about exact scheduling of that, but maybe we could just, you could send the drafts out, and if we do need to vote on it, we would have been able to read them ahead of time, and then we can vote on it then.
Okay.
Okay. Because, I love writing letters and trying to get money from the state. So I'm in full support of this.
Well, if it happens in the next 6 days, Paul, you get to sign.
Okay. Let's do it.
And that is the legislative update for this meeting.
All right, thank you so much. That brings us to town meeting preparation.
So this Saturday is the annual town meeting for Southborough. So it is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, outdoors, socially distanced. Our pre-meeting, our meeting before the annual town meeting is at 12:15, and we will meet in the Neary Library, socially distanced, of course, with proper PPE. And I think that obviously we have an amended school committee approved and voted budget that we'll be bringing forth to the voters, to the town meeting for approval. And the other article that we're bringing forth is the Finn Boiler project. So about a year ago from this December, the school committee, as you know, submitted a statement of interest for 3 projects: the Finn Boiler, Trotter Roof, and the Finn Roof. The project that was invited into the MSBA queue is the Finn Boiler project. So that was exciting. So we have been in the process of doing schematic design, and we submitted that this January 2nd, 2020. And in February, the MSBA Board of Directors voted to fund the project. So we've been working with Hill Associates, the architects, and we have an owner's project manager who's been working with us as well. And then we also awarded the project to a contractor. So the overall cost of the project is $990,180. MSBA's reimbursement rate to the community of Southborough is 36.89%. So the total reimbursement from an MSBA is $365,276, bringing Southborough's total cost $624,903. One of the concerns we've had along this journey really is timing of the project. When the town meeting was scheduled for March, there was some concern about the timeline of the project and being able for the contractor to complete the project in time for the heating system. With town meetings being pushed out as a result of COVID, our concern grew greater, and we've worked closely with our owner's project manager and contractor of late to see if it was even feasible to get the project in on time. And we had a meeting on June 3rd. It was Keith, Becky, and I. And the OPM and the contractor said that if the project is approved at town meeting on June 13th, that they can fit the project in before the heating season. And they also put in a contingency plan. So if for some reason there was an issue, we would have a temporary heat source. So it's been an interesting journey all along. I know it's been endorsed by the committee, but I just wanted to let the committee know that we are moving forward with a project on Saturday for the voters to vote the project for the.
So Article 14 on Saturday,
yep.
Right?
I believe it's the last article.
Ah, okay.
So that is, any questions around town meeting or preparation for town meeting?
I just wanted to add, this isn't specific to school committee, but maybe everybody would be interested, that I asked the town clerk about shade, since we'll be outside and there is no shade. So you are welcome to bring your own chairs with shade, or a little umbrella, not like a beach umbrella. But I know that some people were concerned about that, including me. So you are allowed to do that if you're concerned about sitting out in the sun for hours on end.
I was just going to say we should all bring our sunscreen and bug spray.
Yes, sunscreen, bug spray, and bring, if you're a sports parent and you have one of those little chairs with shade to watch your kids, bring one of those.
Yeah, it's going to be just like a day at the beach, but you know, more talking.
Yes.
No, and no beach.
And no beach.
And no beach.
Have they given any inkling as to how long it might be? Said 14 articles. And I guess if they kind of pared it down to just the financial stuff, right?
Yeah, so it's a consensus agenda. So a lot of the items will be grouped together. So they're anticipating 2 to 3 hours. That was the hope that was expressed.
Katura, there is the volleyball pit around the corner, so you could get your
That's true.
Playing.
Gonna bring my beach blanket then.
Yeah.
And DePetrie Field, this looks like a beach currently, so.
True. That's true. All right, does anybody have any questions about town meeting preparation before we move on? Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's see, so that brings us to Superintendent's report to the committee.
So in your packet is our monthly enrollment report. At this point in time, there are no significant variances. And as we look to enrollment for fiscal year 21, our class sizes are maintained within class size policy. And if you look at the variances between when we started the academic year in August and concluded in May, so we have increased by 15 students.
Okay.
So also in your packet is the monthly fund expenditure report, and I'll have Becky speak to the details of the expenditure report.
So as you can see on the monthly general fund report, as of May 31st, 2020, we had $415,264 or 1.99% remaining on the bottom line. As I previously mentioned, we did see savings in the area of transportation, daily substitutes, general supplies, and utilities as a result of the closure. The finance team is continuing to work with our district administrators and principals to close any outstanding invoices and purchase orders that still remain open. And we're also working closely with them on their expenditure plan for funds, as I said, so that we can relieve some of the pressure off of our FY21 budget. And so that work is ongoing as we close out this fiscal year. Oh, no.
Okay, thank you.
Or I'll make a motion.
Yeah, thank you.
We approve the Southborough Public School District fiscal year 2020 budget monthly general fund expenditure report as of May 31st, 2020 until audited.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Paul?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
And it's a yes for me. All right,
So next in your packet is the FY21 budget calendar, and as we just discussed, the next milestone is the annual town meeting this Saturday. So if all goes well, we will have a approved FY21 budget for the upcoming year.
Okay.
And lastly, in your packet is the FY21 school committee approved amended budget that we'll be bringing to town meeting. So again, that's just for your reference. and we will provide supporting documentation to committee members prior, either tomorrow or Friday prior to the town meeting for your references.
I was just going to ask about that. So we're going to have a handout, right? And then there's also the warrant. Will you be sending both of those things?
Correct. And I will have printed copies of those for you as well when we meet on Saturday at 12:15.
Okay, great.
And that is the superintendent's report to the committee.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so educational policy none at this time. Policy development and or distribution none at this time. So that takes us to personnel items, distribution of personnel report.
So we have one unanticipated leave of absence. So Amy Brewis, who's instructional technology teacher at Neary School, has decided to take a leave of absence for next year. So we're glad it's just for 1 year. She does an amazing job, and she's pursuing exploring another career opportunity. So we wish her well. And then Mary Ellen Duggan has resigned from her Woodward School position, but fortunately she will continue her role as the coordinator of wellness for our district, and she's done a great job. And Jennifer Henry has resigned from her district-wide BCBA position, but again, Jennifer is the early childhood coordinator, so we're fortunate to have her continue working for the district in a different capacity. So that is the personnel report.
Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, so no communications, and then we have action on the minutes.
Tara, I have a 3-part motion ready here that I think you're really going to enjoy.
Oh, this is wonderful. Wow, you're going out with a bang. That's great.
Right. Bear with me here, but I move that we approve the minutes of the special open meeting of January 11, 2020, the open meeting of May 13, 2020, capital planning subcommittee meeting of November 5th, 2019, operational budget subcommittee meeting of January 2nd, 2020, operational budget subcommittee meeting of May 4th, 2020, policy development subcommittee meeting of February 27th, 2020. I further move that we approve and release the executive session minutes of January 11th, 2020, executive session minutes of March 11, 2020, executive session minutes of May 13, 2020, and also that we release the executive session minutes of September 11, 2019, October 7, 2019, November 13, 2019, December 11, 2019, and January 8th, 2020. I'm pretty sure I got them all.
You did.
I'll second that. I hope I was able to cover them all with my second.
I think you can.
Yep, I think so. Okay, any discussion before we vote? Okay, we'll do a roll call. Paul?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
And it's a yes for me. So great, nice job, thank you.
Excellent job, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That was 9 years in the making.
I was just gonna, all that experience was not for nothing. Okay, approval of bills and payrolls happens electronically now. Agenda items for next, that really, I think should say next meeting.
Yes,
election.
I think we had the evening of June 17th as the next scheduled meeting, but I believe there's a conflict. So I will have Cheryl try to find a time that works for the committee members.
Okay, hopefully we can just do it at some point earlier that day, because I do think that works for some of us, and it literally should be like a 5-minute meeting. So, you know, it should be pretty quick. So hopefully, so we'll see. But if not, maybe the 18th, you know, just sometime shortly after the election, I think would make sense.
You know, don't forget that Kamali has to get sworn in first.
Correct. That's true. Yeah.
We did arrange that with Jim Haggerty, so he's lined up to do that work immediately following the election if all goes well.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So that brings us to audience. Actually, can I just ask another question while we're talking about agenda items? Do we anticipate scheduling? I know we don't normally meet over the summer, but are we thinking that we may schedule a meeting or two over the summer in light of what's going on?
I think it would be highly likely that we'll need additional meetings over the summer. I think, so it's really the will of the committee if we want to set dates or if we want to play it by ear. It's up to the committee members.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to play it by ear. I just thought it was worth mentioning that it seems as though we're going to need some more time together.
Are those likely to be combined meetings, Greg?
It probably would make sense to have combined meetings since the topics that will be discussed will impact all 3 districts.
Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say if it was just us, we could say like, weeks we know we're definitely not available, but if it's combined, then forget that.
Yeah, I think if we play it by ear, really, I think if the challenge of getting all committees together to discuss topics is just too challenging, then I think we'll schedule separate meetings and just have repeat agendas.
It's actually less challenging now because you can be anywhere.
That's true.
That's true.
You could be at the beach at the town meeting.
There you go.
Okay, all right, so that brings us to our second round of audience sharing. I haven't looked to see how many people we still have attending, but it looks like we do have some questions and at least a comment, I think. Greg, you want to?
Sure. So the first question is from Summer Forrester, and it's a technology question. It's given the security issues with Zoom, will the district consider an alternative platform? And I will have Julie Doyle speak to that question.
So we have done a lot of research, and we feel as if the settings that we can push down globally with the admin dashboard is giving us the maximum amount of security. And it seems to be working very well with our teachers and our students. It has great integration with our Canvas, which is our online or our learning management systems, which gives us even another layer of security. So at this point, we are comfortable with our decision to stay with Zoom.
Right. The next audience sharing is from Karina Cullivan, and it's just there are places making masks for free. One called So Studio that accept donations as well. So just a general comment. The next question is, or statement or question is from Julie Connolly. And it's about fall. With the understanding that much will be mandated by the state, are there things we can be planning for assuming the hybrid model is likely and that there may be a spike later in the fall? For example, would it be possible to start school 2 weeks earlier so we hit the period of time where outbreak is less likely, and perhaps plan for an October break for cleaning and separation? Are there grants available or surplus FY20 funds to hire additional teachers utilizing underutilized space to have more time and learning for students while maintaining social distance? Can we organize our 10 student cohorts for voluntary activities or parents volunteer-led learning on non-school days? I think we need to think outside the box to best serve our community and maintain the high level of education, as well as social emotional support that our families expect from our wonderful schools. Thank you all for all your dedication during these difficult times. So I think a lot of great points. We are doing as much out of the box thinking as we can in terms of planning for the fall and thinking about cohorts, thinking about school calendars. The school calendar is one of the responsibilities of the school committee. And one of my recommendations is to add it as an agenda item at our June 24th combined meeting to discuss if any changes to the calendar are warranted as a result of COVID-19.
Okay. And then I think part 2 of that question was if there are any grants available.
So we have secured one grant through the CARES Act, and we are waiting to see if there are other opportunities that are available to school districts. At this time, there aren't a lot of additional grants for securing PPE other than federal monies. And we're working very closely with our town administrator around some of the funds that the town has received specifically for addressing COVID-19 related expenses. So the next question or comment is around the budget and the net cost savings or cost shifting of expenditures due to the COVID-19 impact. Could that be shared again? So Becky, if you want to speak to that.
And I'll just say, so we did have a detailed presentation on this last month, and I think it was last month. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Yeah. So for a really high, digging down level of detail, I would suggest viewing that, or we could, I don't know, make the slide available or something. But Becky did give a brief overview of it earlier in this meeting. And Becky, if you don't mind, just a synopsis would be great.
Sure. So some of the areas where we saw cost savings were due to our utilities. Less people in the buildings meant less usage for electricity, heating, and also water and sewer. We also saw savings in our transportation costs as we negotiated a reduced rate with NRT, our transportation company. We did see some reductions in terms of purchasing of like general supplies in the schools. And the biggest cost savings that we saw were on our daily substitutes because with 1/3 of the school year being remote, there was not a need to have physical substitutes in the classroom for the remote learning. So I think on estimate, I had about $213,000 in savings for those items that I just listed.
And then Alan Belniak just commented that he thank you for the information, Katura, and he'll revisit the video from last month.
Okay, great.
And that concludes audience sharing.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for those of you who attended remotely and for taking the time to do this. We appreciate you being here. So, okay, so the next item on the agenda is we're going to move into executive session. And would somebody like to make a motion?
Paul should make the motion. It's his last meeting.
But I don't want it to end. All right. I'll move that we move into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining due to the chair's determination that a discussion regarding this matter in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the position of the committee with no intent to return to open meeting.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll do a roll call vote. Paul?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
And that's a yes for me. So, all right, that ends the broadcast portion of this meeting.